Hi, Senorita, Senor, I'm SeeNo and welcome you to the third installment of my little diary, my developer diary. In the last part we talked about inventory and items, which is like the first column in this graphic. Today we can finally move on and talk about spells. Remember, spellcasting is a very important core mechanic in my game. So in this video we are going to talk about spells and projectiles, triggers and effects. We will probably leave the status effects for now and wrap them up in another video. And we'll focus on these three middle columns over here. And in order to show you what actually happens behind the curtains, I decided it would be fun to build a spell as we go in this video to show you each step on the road and show you how the system that I implemented actually operates on a basic level. So if you're interested, stay tuned. We begin after the video. Intro. Let's start talking about the bigger picture before we delve into the details. I want to try to explain this so even non-programmers can understand, which will be a little bit tough to be honest. But bear with me, I think there will be a moment where it all clicks. So if it doesn't make sense right away, don't worry. Everything starts with our spell resource. This is like a form we have to fill out where we write data down about what the spell is. Its name, its mana cost, to which school it belongs, is it a fire or water or a dark spell, okay? Then inside that form we have some fields we can fill out. One of these fields will define how the spell moves. This is the movement resource. Okay, does it fly in a straight line or behaves differently? The next part is the projectile. This is the actual thing that will exist in our game world. Okay, that you can see on screen. The other is just a data sheet, but this projectile is actually what will be inside of our game, flying around, hitting stuff or missing stuff. Okay, and the projectile has triggers attached to it. A trigger is basically telling the projectile to do something when something happens. For example, a trigger could be, hey, projectile, if you have overlapping collision shapes with like an enemy unit, do something. So if you hit an enemy unit, I want you to do something. Okay, that is a trigger telling a spell when it should do something, when it should activate, basically. And the next part, the last piece of the puzzle, is the effect. The effect is what happens when it gets triggered. So the overview is we have a spell where we define what this spell is, then we give it a movement, then we attach a projectile to it, which is like the physical object in our game. This projectile has triggers that check if the conditions are met to trigger an effect. And the effect then basically says, okay, deal damage, heal, increase the speed of whatever you hit. Okay? And again, it might be a little bit confusing, but let's jump into it and let's craft a spell together. And then I think you will see the progress or the workflow here. Here we are inside of Godot. And it all starts by creating a new spell resource. So I go into my spell folder over here. We have a new folder, bombardment, and we create a new resource of the type spell, put it in here and call it bombardment. Okay. And now you can see I have my bombardment.tres file. And this is the form we now have to fill out. And in my resource, in my spell resource here, I have different export variables, and they define what fields I have on the right side to fill out. One example, we have a field, or we created a field called export variable speed, and it has a default value of 400. And you can see it over here. There is the field speed of 400. I could also do another one and call this one export variable, let's just say test, okay? And if I save it, you will see now we have a new field over here that we can fill out. Obviously, that is not attached to any behavior. It doesn't have any purpose right now, so I can delete it again. I just wanted to show you that this form on the right side is actually directly connected to all these export variables that I defined in this adventure of creating my own game, right? This is what a spell essentially is. So let's fill out the forms, okay? We have the bombardment, the ID, and then we have the name, the display name, bombardment with a capital B. And then the next field is texture. And this is how the spell will look like in game. So if we start the game right now and we close the music, this are the item textures, but let's say, for example, this goes over here. This is the spell texture, okay? So I don't have a texture right now, but we will grab one real quick from gameicons.net. Highly appreciate it and recommend it. Meteor, okay? I want the spell to be like a meteor coming and dealing massive damage, basically, is the idea I have. And I want it to be a fire spell. And for the fire spells, I use like a reddish orange all the time. These colors will probably change because normally I have a color scheme and this doesn't really fit. But that is fine for now, whatever. And we save it as a PNG. Very nice. And now I can go to my downloads. Always like attribute, please. Look at what license you're using, very important stuff. So make sure to give attribution where you have to. And now I can use the meteor impact texture and drag and drop it over here. Now our spell already has a picture. Really cool. Let's give it like a really cheap mana cost just so we can test stuff out. As I said, it should be a fire spell. There is no drop sound yet, and I will just show you another workflow of what I do, okay? So now we have to find a sound of that, or for that spell, when we drag and drop it in the inventory screen. Okay, so this sound, if you listen closely, you heard that? So we kind of need a sound for that. A great website to get free sounds is freesound.org. There are other sites, but I like this one. And I found this sound over here. Listen. I think that should work just fine. So I will download this real quick. Again, pay attention to the license you are using. In this case, there's nothing to really be afraid of. And now we have the sound, and the reason I'm using Audacity to clip the sound is because if you listen again, we have a lot of sound in the beginning, like the first maybe 2 seconds over here, but afterwards it doesn't really matter much, right? Like it fades out anyway. So what I will do is I will clip, I will make a split here, get rid of this and export only like the first 2 seconds of the audio. And now we drag and drop the sound file into our bombardment and finally into our form. We can write a little description. Boom. Okay. The projectile scene again is the projectile is the object that will actually be visible in our game. So there is a default value that I want to keep, but the projectile texture is the visual representation basically of our spell. So let's go maybe with this one. It doesn't really matter too much right now. I will probably change that, but just to get further on, we drag and drop it over here. And since those sprites are pretty big, I will scale them down to only like 1/4 of the original size. We can leave lifetime and speeds and flying sound and whatever on the default values for now. We will play around with these anyway in a second. Now we have the movement, and currently there are 3 different movement types in my game. There is the straight movement, just a straight line from where we are and where we click, easy. We have the homing movement. This will take a target and tries to follow the target around. And we have the arc movement, which we will use for this spell. I will show you all the 3 movements anyway, but let's just go. Actually, you know what? Maybe let's go with with a straight movement first, so it's easier to see. Okay. Max range, we don't need all of that. It's fine. Now we finished. If we go back to our little graphic, we have set up the spell. We gave it a movement resource. We set up the projectile, which basically is giving it a texture and the correct scene. And we finished this first block. This is all we have to do. The spell is there. It doesn't do anything yet, but it is completely there. We can actually test this by saving. And now we just need to attach this spell to any item we have, so we can actually equip it, right? So let's go to our items here, and let's maybe take the, I don't know, the feather spell, which currently only has the death beam in the dark school, but now we can say, in the fire school, I want a new spell. We load the meteor spell we just created, which should be here but isn't. And I wonder why. Why isn't it here? Didn't it save? It's called bombardment, my mistake, not meteor. So we go to spells, we go to bombardment, and we take this one. And now we edit. So now we have the bombardment spell as our fire school in the feather item. And if we run the game, it hopefully, let's test if we didn't forget anything. In the feather spell, yeah, there's the bombardment with the description text of boom. And now we can drag and drop it over here. And it even made the sound, right? And if we start the game and we cast, even the projectile is flying, as you can see, in a straight line. It doesn't do anything because it doesn't have triggers. It doesn't understand when it should activate an effect. But that is the next step in the process, right? But you can see how easy it was to actually get this spell to be castable, right? New spell resource, give it a movement, give it a texture, give it a sprite and a sound maybe, and that's optional. And that's it, right? So easy. Arguably, a spell that doesn't do anything isn't that much fun, though. Before we give it a little bit of life and effects so it can actually do something, let's check out the homing movement instead. We had the straight line right now. So with the homing movement, we can actually select what it should home to. Enemy units, ally units, or any unit at all. And how strongly it should like arc into hitting the target. And this is a little bit easier if I just show you. If we take this spell now and we run over to the enemy, right? Now you can see if I cast, and I cast like away from it, but the spell still tries to hit it, right? And you can see that we had like the lifetime to 3 seconds. If I go to 30 seconds and give it maybe a speed of like 100 instead, and we restart the game and try again with the feather spell. Come on. And run to the enemy duck. Let's see what happens. And now the spell already behaves different, right? You can see now it's very slow, but it stays for like 30 seconds. So this already feels like a different spell we had like 20 seconds ago, right? And that is like the power of this modular system that I implemented. That we can have a lot of different spells that are easy and quick to set up, but by just changing a couple of numbers around, they really have a different feel to them, okay? So if we go with homing strength for, let's say, like 500, maybe we make this thing really quick. This will probably like be totally silly, but let's see what happens, right? Why not? Come on, give me an enemy unit. Okay. So, oh my god, look at this. Because it like adjusts its movement like so quickly, it looks like it's there like twice. This is ridiculous. But anyway, it's so much fun to play around. Let's go with like movement 100. Let's go with lifetime, like 5 seconds or whatever. And lastly, it shouldn't be homing, it should be the arc movement, okay? So let's see what the arc movement does with the normal options over there. But this is how I want the spell to behave. It's the correct movement set. So what this does is, it kind of like flies in an arc. And it's not really like that easy to see, so let's maybe go with an arc factor of 0.9 instead. We can, yeah. And now you can see now it arcs. Instead of a straight line, it goes like wee. So 0.9 is a little bit. Is it too much? I'm not entirely sure. Let's adjust the travel time, how long it takes to reach the target position. And the idea for the spell I have is you really have to aim in advance, okay? So maybe like this. So the meteor starts flying and boom, and then it hits, but it's like 5 seconds later. So you really have to hit a stationary target or like maybe aim here, right? And now it will take 5 seconds before it's there. Boom. So this is like the idea I have for the spell. But it should do something when it arrives, correctly? Like we need triggers and we need effects next. Since this video is already 15 minutes long, I decided to cut it up into 2 different parts. So in the next part, we can finally implement the trigger and effects. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.